Good morning, this is Ted from Dementia Talks. Today we're going to start a series that discusses one of the most important set of things you can do if you have problems with your memory. And quite honestly, you should start doing these things as soon as possible. After you find out you have dementia or even suspect you have a memory issue. For more information, you can look at What's Not What Now in Wandering Light if you've just been recently diagnosed, to find out more about how to adjust your life and to deal with the fact that you have a form of dementia or Alzheimer's. Obviously, after you find that you have dementia, there are going to be a number of serious issues that run through your mind. This, all surrounding the loss of what you thought was going to be the rest of your life. In Wandering Light, we have a series of helps under getting to acceptance can help you through the bumpy road ahead. You may be struggling with what does it mean to have dementia. And hopefully for that reason, you have turned to this episode or one of the prior ones. And hopefully you have learned you can live positively and still have dementia. But there is a catch. Isn't that the way it always is? Here it is. The ability to live positively is supported by a number of things that you need to do differently. Some of the most important habits you need to develop are called coping mechanisms. Coping mechanisms allow you to do what you normally do without expending as much mental energy as you did in the past. That sounds simple, but they're not always obvious. You could list all the things that you do in the day and probably still miss this first, most critical one. One we're going to talk about today is the most important coping mechanism, and it's called simplifying your environment. Now, simplifying sounds like it's about minimalization. It has some elements of minimalization, although minimalization and simplification are very different. Minimalization is all about living with less. This includes less financial burdens, less debt, less unnecessary expenses. And for most minimalists, the philosophy is about getting rid of excess stuff and a life living based upon experiences versus worldly possessions. Simplification, on the other hand, is about reducing the amount of stuff you have, but it has an additional ingredient, and that is about creating a way to live your life in a simpler way that helps you with your memory. Psychology Today identifies 5 ways to simplify your life as: number 1, declutter your house. Number 2, get rid of bad mental habits, which is like putting stuff not away in the right spot, or dwelling on things that you shouldn't, that you don't need. Cut out toxic people. Take charge of your money and gain control of your life. And then, just like Nike says, just do it or start subtracting. So let's talk about what simplification actually means for someone with memory issues. Anytime we do something, we expend mental energy. The more mental energy we expend, the more dementia feels worse. As we said in the last episode, we are spending our chits too fast. Often we have to exert mental energy to simply because our environment is changing. The higher the degree of change, the more we are going to have to spend our mental energy. And the more we spend, the worse off our day will become, and maybe also the next few days if you spend too much. So if you're looking for something in your life which creates, if you start looking for something in your life that creates complexity, they should be the highest on the list of terms in terms of addressing simplification. The problem is, they're not always obvious. Simple things can be at the root of the loss or use of mental energy or chits loss. Unfortunately, they literally can be right in front of your nose, but far too often we miss it. For examples of simple complexity in our everyday life, if you go to a refrigerator and has something different or things different in a different place every time you go to look there, stuff is just put in there helter skelter wherever space can be found, then you're going to find it very difficult to find things that you would normally want to look for. For example, if you're looking for a jar of pickles and it's not always kept in the same place pickles are kept, you will struggle to find them. This is made worse by a factor that goes along with dementia, which is called tunneling. Tunneling prevents you from seeing something except those things which are right in front of you. It's not that there's something wrong with your eyes or physically wrong with your eyes. It is that you only see that which is right in front of you. And here's the worst part. If what you're looking for looks different than what you think it's supposed to look like, you won't even see that, or chances are you won't see that. So for example, even though the pickles in the refrigerator might be in the same place all the time, when you look, if they've changed the label on the jar and you think it should be green and now it's red, you could be looking at that green jar forever and not recognize those are the pickles that you want. The next example is in the bathroom. If you have stuff all over and thrown in the drawer and you don't organize it, then remember, every time you open that drawer, you are using mental chits because you had to remember in your mind where all these things are located. What that means is each night, now that you know that you've put your toothbrush in that spot, you're asking your mind to cache that from short-term memory into long-term, and that's really where the struggle begins. So if you don't keep things in the same place, then you're going to keep going to that drawer or closet and keep not finding the things that you want, or standing there thinking, what was I looking for? If you're not the person, for example, in your closet that puts things away, then you need help from your caretaker or your spouse or whoever is putting that away, so that you can have a system where things are always in the same spot, which then uses less chits because it requires less memory to know where to go. The next are some places, as an example, that are less than obvious. But we can use the same philosophy for those less obvious places. It could be your workbench, it could be where you do crafts, it could be where you watch TV, a place where you use the computer. Any place that you spend time needs to be simplified, organized, and cleaned out of junk. Remember, this is not about being a minimalist, and it's not about being type A. This is a pragmatic call for you to recognize that these complexities are what's damaging your mental attitude. So my advice is get rid of everything you can. The more stuff you keep, the more stuff you have to file away in your mind as to where things are. Simplification requires that you not only evaluate whether you need it, but also evaluate whether or not it's in a spot that can easily be found, so that when you go looking for it, you find it, because it's always in the same place. This finding things always in the same place is called a habit, and it requires far less mental energy. There are countless other areas that can be there. I hesitate to mention this because, quite frankly, after you get to a certain phase of dementia, you shouldn't be driving your car. But if you're still in the early phase and you're driving, do not let that car become a rolling purse or a rolling trash can. You need to keep it clean and organized, because every one of those things you have in the past that didn't bother you, that they're all in the car, all over the place, are now a mental distraction. So start with things that need, so, excuse me. So the next place to look is where coping mechanisms actually help you on a day-to-day basis. So a coping mechanism's central point is to reduce the amount of mental energy that it takes. Simple example is to-do list. When you write things down on a list, then you no longer feel the obligation to keep them tucked into your mind. And all you just have to remember is you have to look to a list. Now, here is the trick. Remembering that you have to look to a list is called a habit. And a habit, by definition, is effective, can be ineffective for things that you don't want to do, but a good habit actually requires far less mental energy to execute, which is the goal. We're trying to reduce the amount of mental chits that we spend each day, particularly in the morning, because the less you spend in the morning, the more those chits get spread out over the rest of the day, and the happier you are and everybody else is for your progress. So my advice is very simple. Take on this first and most important one and declutter. Get rid of what you don't need and focus on putting things in the same spot as much as possible. The more you do that, the less chits you're going to spend. If you have questions about this, please contact me on either the YouTube channel for Dementia Talks, and we'll answer any questions that you have on there, or also go to Wandering Light, that's wanderingLITE.com, and you can put your questions there. This same discussion will also be up on that, and you can put your questions right underneath that article, and we'll do our best to respond, and hopefully others will also respond as well. So again, this is Ted from Dementia Talks and Wandering Light, wishing you a positive and happy day. Goodbye.